When my grandfather passed away, I inherited something far greater than a piece of land. I inherited a legacy, one stitched together with calloused hands, sweat-soaked shirts, and the unwavering determination of a man who had believed in hard work above all else. His ranch wasn't just a property, it was history. It had been in the family for 150 years, a stretch of rolling fields, creeks, and oak trees that had seen generations born, raised, and buried beneath its soil. To me, it was sacred. The first time I drove up the long gravel driveway after the funeral, I felt the weight of both grief and responsibility. The white ranch house, a bit weathered but proud, stood like a sentinel watching over the land. The barn still smelled faintly of hay and old leather, even though the cattle had long since been sold off when Grandpa grew too old to manage them. I stepped onto the porch and half expected to see him sitting in his rocking chair, pipe in hand, telling me the same old stories he'd told 100 times before. But the chair was empty, and for the first time, the silence felt deafening. I thought the challenge ahead of me would be restoring the ranch, maybe deciding what to do with it, sell it, lease it, or try to breathe life into it again. What I didn't expect was trouble from the moment I unlocked the front door. Trouble, in this case, came in the form of a woman I'd later come to call Karen. She didn't knock. She didn't even hesitate. The screen door slammed open, and she barged right in, heels clacking on the wooden floor like she owned the place. "Well, it's about time someone showed up," she said, her voice sharp, her eyes sweeping across the living room with disdain. "I'm the president of the Neighborhood Homeowners Association, and I need to speak with whoever's responsible for this property." For a moment, I was too stunned to reply. I was still holding the keys in my hand. "This property?" I repeated. "This is my grandfather's ranch, and now it's mine." Her eyebrows shot up as if I'd just confessed to a crime. "Yours? Well, then you and I are going to have a problem. You see, your grandfather may have owned this land, but the HOA has certain standards. The fences are falling apart, the grass is overgrown, and frankly, that barn looks like it's ready to collapse. It's an eyesore. We've been patient long enough, but now that you're here, things will need to change." I blinked at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. The HOA? On my grandfather's ranch? This land had been here for generations, long before some subdivision popped up nearby. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You think your HOA has authority over a ranch that's been here for 150 years? She crossed her arms, a smirk playing on her lips. "We have authority over the neighborhood, and technically, your property falls under our jurisdiction. You'll need to bring it up to code, or we'll have to take legal action." I almost laughed out loud. Almost. But something in her smug expression kept me calm. Instead, I just studied her for a moment. She saw a man in jeans, boots, and a dusty jacket. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was who I really was outside of this ranch. I wasn't just some ranch heir trying to figure out what to do with an old property. I was the sitting governor of this state. And at that moment, I realized Karen had no idea who she was talking to. I didn't tell her right away. Instead, I let her go on, listing demands like she was issuing orders in a boardroom. Paint the house. Tear down the barn. Replace the fences. Trim the trees. Pay the association dues, of course. She spoke with the kind of arrogance that comes from years of bullying people into compliance, people who didn't have the time, money, or energy to fight back. When she finally stopped to take a breath, I said quietly, "Ma'am, with all due respect, you don't have jurisdiction here. This ranch predates your HOA by over a century, and I have no intention of tearing down anything my grandfather built." Her smirk turned into a scowl. "We'll see about that." And with that, she stormed out as abruptly as she'd come in. For a week, I tried to ignore her. I walked the land, remembering summers spent chasing fireflies with my cousins, mornings when Grandpa would wake me up at dawn to help him mend a fence or feed the horses. I thought about how he'd told me once, "This land is more than dirt, boy. It's memory. It's sweat. It's who we are." I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. But ignoring Karen was like ignoring a hornet in the room. She didn't go away. She came back with letters, fines, threats of legal action. She sent landscapers to my driveway without asking. She even had the gall to spray paint "violation" on one of the ranch fences. Finally, I decided enough was enough. The next time she showed up, this time with 2 HOA board members in tow, I greeted her on the porch. She started in again about bylaws and community standards, and I raised a hand to stop her. "Karen," I said, using her name for the first time, "do you know who I am?" She scoffed. "A stubborn rancher who doesn't know the rules." I looked her straight in the eye. "I'm the governor of this state." The silence that followed was almost comical. Her mouth opened, then shut like a fish gasping for air. The 2 board members looked at each other, clearly realizing they were in over their heads. I let the moment hang before continuing. "This ranch isn't under your HOA's authority. Legally, historically, and practically, you have no claim here. What you've been doing isn't enforcement, it's harassment. And if you step foot on this property again without my permission, I'll make sure the law is enforced. Do I make myself clear?" Her face turned red, but she didn't argue. Not then. She just muttered something under her breath and shuffled off with her entourage. But of course, people like Karen don't quit easily. Over the next month, she tried everything. Petitions, complaints to the county, even an attempt to get a local news crew to run a story about the neglected ranch. Each time, I countered with facts, records, and, when necessary, a well-placed phone call. In the process, I learned something important, not just about her, but about people like her. Karen didn't really care about the fences, or the barn, or the grass. What she cared about was control. The HOA gave her power in her little corner of the world, and she wasn't about to let that power slip, not even when faced with someone who outranked her in every way imaginable. But here's the thing about power. It only matters if you use it wisely. My grandfather never cared much for politics, but he taught me plenty about leadership. He used to say, "A man's strength isn't shown in how loud he shouts, but in how steady he stands." So I didn't shout. I stood steady. I poured my energy into restoring the ranch, not to satisfy Karen, but to honor Grandpa. I fixed the fences myself, just like he taught me. I painted the porch with my own hands. I cleaned out the barn, not to tear it down, but to preserve it. Slowly, the ranch came alive again, not polished and perfect, but proud and true to its roots. Word spread in the community. Neighbors I hadn't seen in years came by to lend a hand, not because of who I was politically, but because they remembered my grandfather. They remembered how he'd loaned them tools, helped mend their roofs, or shared his harvest when times were lean. His legacy wasn't just in the land, it was in the people he'd touched. And when those neighbors saw Karen try to bully me, they didn't stay quiet. They spoke up, reminding her that the ranch wasn't a blight on the community, but a piece of its soul. Eventually, the HOA board grew tired of her antics. They stripped her of her presidency. The day I heard that news, I walked out to the porch and sat in Grandpa's rocking chair. For the first time since he passed, I felt peace. I realized something then. Life will always bring its Karens. People who try to impose their will, people who confuse control with care, people who think rules matter more than relationships. But there's a lesson in facing them, one I think my grandfather would have wanted me to remember. Stand firm. Protect what matters. And never let someone else's noise drown out the truth of who you are. The ranch is still here. So am I. And every time the wind whistles through the oak trees, I hear my grandfather's voice in it, reminding me that legacies aren't inherited in words, they're lived in actions. As for Karen, she moved away not long after losing her title. I heard she found another neighborhood to preside over, another set of people to boss around. I wish her well, honestly, because in the end, she taught me something too. Power doesn't come from titles or positions. Real power comes from knowing your roots, standing your ground, and carrying forward the values of those who came before you. And no HOA, no matter how loud, can ever take that away.